Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a spoiler-free review of Scream 7. However, there will be a spoiler section at the end of this video just because I feel like there is no way I'm going to be able to actually talk about this movie very much without spoilers. So I will let you know in advance before I move into that section of the video, and there will also be timestamps down below for it. So, in this highly anticipated Scream sequel, we do follow Sidney Prescott once again, where she has moved to a place called Pine Grove with her family. And after there is an attack at the Mocker House in Woodsboro, Ghostface decides that he or they should come to the place that Sidney lives and try to get after her and her family. So, in this review, I want to start out talking about a lot of the things that I like in here while trying to be as vague as possible. I'll get into things that I like that have the spoilers at the end, and most of my negative stuff is going to be in the spoiler part as well. But just starting out, I want to say that I'm so excited to have Sidney Prescott back in this movie. I think that 6 was very good, and it didn't bother me too much that she wasn't a part of it, but anytime we can get more Sidney, I want to get more Sidney, that's for sure. She is just the most important part of this franchise for pretty much everyone, I think, and it's awesome to have her back in here. I also really like getting to see her play a mom. I think that she has been just very nurturing as a character throughout the franchise, but you get to see that more fully realized now that she is a mom here. And I also like getting to see her relationship with her husband, Mark. I was a little bit sad with the fact that Patrick Dempsey did not get to come back to play him. However, I really do like Joel McHale a lot, so I liked getting to see him in this. I also thought that her daughter, Tatum, did a really good job in here. I hadn't seen that actress in anything before, so I appreciated the job that she did in here. I think that she just has a good quality to her. She is kind of spunky like Sidney. It takes a little bit to get to that throughout the course of the film, but we definitely see that. So I think that as far as the other returning characters go, I was definitely excited to see Gail once again. She is definitely a mainstay in this franchise. I know that Courtney Cox has said that she is always going to be coming back for these, no matter what her part is in it, really. But I'm always excited to see her on screen because Gail is a really great character as well. And then we also do have Chad and Mindy from Screams 5 and 6 back in this one, and I was really happy to see that they were included in this as well. So I want to talk about the setting a little bit. I really like it. So I think that Scream 6 was a lot of fun being in New York, but I was excited to see that this one was going to be back in more of a small town again. First and foremost, I liked getting to see the Mocker House again. It didn't really look quite like the Mocker House in Scream 5. That's because it was more designed to kind of be like that, but not actually be it. And it just was awesome to be in that house again. It really does look authentic to how it looked in the original. And I liked some of the updates that they put in there as well. I don't want to get too much into it, but I will maybe discuss that scene in general in the spoiler section of this video. But I also just really liked it being in the small town of Pine Grove. That is very similar to how it looks where I live and some of the neighboring places around me. So I do have to just throw in this little side note about like my theater experience because it does kind of tie into this. So I have been wanting to, get tickets early for Scream 7 for a long time, and it was just getting closer and closer to the date that people were going to start being able to get tickets and stuff, and we had not heard about whether or not our cinema was getting it, and I was checking daily, multiple times a day if I'm being honest, and I found out that we did not get it. So that was definitely upsetting. And I'm not usually the one that is going to want to travel to a different location in order to see the movie. However, with something like Scream, you just kind of have to go and see it as soon as possible because of the whodunit nature of it. It can easily get spoiled for you. Just getting on social media in general, you might see something that you don't want to see very quickly. So it was definitely of the essence, to get in and get to see this. So um, we did find out the reason that they didn't get it is because there have been some different R-rated horror movies from Paramount that didn't perform well at our cinema. And, they tried very hard to get it from Paramount, but they would not give it to them. So I do just have to say a little plea for everyone out there watching this that, if you love horror, you should definitely go support it in your cinema when they bring it for you because, if you have it underperform, that could inhibit them from getting other movies in the future, just like it did with this one. So, just something to keep in mind. But since we did have to travel to another place, my mom and I, we ended up going to a neighboring town and their cinema, and it was like right in the middle of the town. And the one that we go to is outside of town. It's like a newer building, but this one was a lot older style. I would imagine that it has been a cinema for a long time, and it is now a chain one, but I don't think it had started that way by any means. It just seems like a very old building that the cinema was at, and they've got like the older style marquee, and it was just really cool. Definitely an interesting experience. I mean, I would prefer to just be at the one in my town, but I had fun with that. And the cool thing about it was, after watching this movie where it was taking place in a small town and we had scenes where they were in the downtown area where it was just completely dead because they had everything closed for their curfew, but they had, some of the characters running around and Ghostface chasing them. So then we get out of the cinema once it's over and we are just thrown into that downtown atmosphere as well. However, luckily it was where there was a lot of traffic, there was a lot of people out and about. So otherwise, I think it would have been creepy, especially with it being nighttime when we came out of there. But I did really like the small town setting here, and I think that there were a lot of different cool sets within the movie, and I will get into talking about them in the spoiler section as well, just because we'll talk about the scenes that they are part of. So then some other things that I did like, I would say some of the references that they make in here to specifically the original one. I'm not going to say anything too much here, but there are like some lines of dialogue that are similar, or we've also got some similar songs being used in it. I thought that stuff was pretty cool. And I also thought that there were a couple pretty good kills in here. I don't necessarily think that they were on par with some of the other kills that we've gotten in previous films, but I do think that they had a couple good ones in here, and I will get into those in the spoiler section as well. And I think that's mostly all that I can really talk about in the spoiler-free section of this video, unfortunately. I will just say that if you are thinking about going to see this one, you definitely should. Not just for, trying to show up for your movie theater, especially if it's like a small town one like mine, but also just, a lot of work went into this movie, and it's always good to support the ones that are in charge of that. So now, if you are still watching this, I assume that you have either watched Scream 7 or that you don't care about spoilers, because we are going to start the spoiler section now. Okay, so if you're still here, awesome. So starting out, I want to talk about some of the different scenes that I really liked in here, and we'll kind of talk about some of those cool deaths that they had in here as well. So first and foremost, we'll talk about the opening scene. I really did like the look of the Mocker house in here. I thought that it was really cool how they had it set up with like some stab memorabilia, as well as more of the true crime aspect of it, and they had like, the chalk outlines and stuff. I really liked the animatronic ghost face that they had, and I thought it was really creepy when, they thought that was still the one that they were looking at, but it was the actual ghost face as well. Um, but I thought that it was pretty cool to see Ghostface coming out of the burning Mocker house. However, I did see a post on Facebook, I don't know, maybe a week or so before the movie was going to come out, and it was, people asking if this shot in Scream 7 was cooler than the shot that we get in Halloween Kills where Michael is coming out of Laurie's burning house. No, it's not. I don't think that could be topped for me, in my opinion. I love that shot from Halloween Kills, and I was, interested to see how I felt about it when I watched this movie. But yeah, I got to go with Halloween on that one. But moving into some of the other scenes in this that I thought were really good. Um, First off, I would say in the high school where they have their theater and have it set up for the play that they're doing. I think that is a really cool set piece. And I do like McKenna Grace's death. I think that's one of the best ones in the movie. However, with the lighting in that scene, it does make it a little bit hard to see quite what's going on. Because there's just a spotlight on her as she's up in the air, and then it's dark like everywhere around her, and she's kind of moving back and forth, and it does make it a little bit harder to see, unfortunately. But I do think that that one is a cool death in the franchise for sure. And so the next one that I want to talk about would be the scene in Sydney's house when they are initially going to try to flee, and they're getting all their stuff ready to leave, but Ghostface ends up coming down from, I'm assuming, the attic or something like that. I think that part in itself is really creepy, but then specifically when they are going into that panic room and then trying to get out of it and going behind the walls, I think that's a really cool scene as well. I am also just really claustrophobic, so I think that them being inside the wall just works for me. It's really definitely scary. So then the next one that I want to talk about would probably be the scene in the tavern. And I think that one is pretty cool. There is another really good death in there, and it's the creepy kid that's Anna Camp's son. That's definitely a gory death, but I do feel bad for him because that was pretty messed up. But then some other ones that I wanted to talk about would be the scene in the coffee shop. I thought that that one was pretty cool where Tatum has to end up shooting Ghostface through the wall, and Sydney is helping her by looking at the security cameras and stuff. I thought that that was a pretty well done scene also. And I think that would be most of the scenes that I thought were really cool in here. So I guess we can go ahead and move on to some of the problems that I had with this movie. So first and foremost, one thing that I was really looking for in here, and I did mention it in, I believe, my Scream 6 video, and that was that I wanted them to address the absence of Sam and Tara in here. And it could have been as simple as what they did in Scream 6 with Sydney not being there, where they said that she deserved her happy ending. And it didn't have to be that, it could have just been as easy as Chad and Mindy saying, oh, they're still in New York, or oh, they fled to wherever. Anything like that. Just give me something. And they didn't do that here, unfortunately. But that one is a little bit of a smaller thing for me than some of the stuff that I have that I didn't like in here, but it is still a contributing factor. But as I was watching this, and I guess more toward the end, I was trying to figure out what it was, because it just felt like something was missing from this film. And I'm glad I didn't do this review immediately after the movie because it took me like a day or so to figure out what it was that was missing. And it was just the edge, I think. I just feel like a lot of the Scream films are a lot more edgy than this one was. And I think that it makes sense, though, because of the firing of Melissa Barrera. They were already, up against a lot doing this movie because firing her did upset a large chunk of the fan base. And so they didn't want to do anything that would, upset anyone else, I guess. And I think that some of the things that they did were a little less risky. It just seemed like they were trying to play it a little bit more safe in this one. So when it comes to uh, like the utilization of some of the legacy characters, I think some of that was trying to play it safe a little bit. And I don't want to see any of the main people or returning people die in these at all, but that would be taking a little bit more of a risk there. So I think that them deciding to keep all of the important people alive, yes, it helps me because I don't want to see them die. I want to see them progress with their characters throughout the franchise, but it was a little bit lacking in that regard. But it just also felt like they were trying to do what they could to appease the fans that were left after all of that stuff. And that is probably why, we got Matthew Lillard returning and some of the other people returning. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I do want to just touch on some of the returning characters and how I felt they were utilized and stuff. I liked most of the stuff with Gail in here. However, I didn't like the way that she acted in her interview with Sidney. I just thought that she did go a little bit far when it came to talking about Sidney's children, as well as, mentioning whether or not she was like pushing her trauma onto her children and stuff. I just think that where her and Sidney are at in this state in the franchise, I don't think that she would do that to her anymore. That's something that I would see from like Scream 1 or 2 Gail. I don't see that happening with Scream 7 Gail, at least not towards Sidney. I could see her asking things like that to ones that she hadn't known for, almost 30 years and stuff. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that part. And then with the Meeks twins, I thought that they didn't feel as important in this one as I would have hoped. I thought that they were really growing as characters, especially in Scream 6, but it does feel like they were a little bit more of an afterthought. It felt like they were more comic relief and nothing more in this one. I was really nervous going into this movie for the two of them, and I thought that it would be a humongous mistake to kill either of them off. So I'm glad that they did not do that. Thankfully, with everything with Melissa Barrera and then Jenna Ortega not being a part of this franchise anymore, I think that it would have been really detrimental to, kill off either of them since they were the only other people that were really important other than any of the legacy characters that came back for Screams 5 and 6. So I would have liked to have seen like a little more depth to the two of them, but I did like what we got with them in here at the same time. So moving on, I want to, I guess, start talking about the friend group. And I think that this honestly is the worst friend group in the franchise. There is just nothing with any of these characters, which is really unfortunate because I think that the friend group is a really important part of these, honestly, in varying degrees. But this one, it just feels like there was no development for any of them except for Tatum. And honestly, I don't even remember the names of really any of the other ones as well. But yeah, there was just not much of anything to any of these characters. And a lot of the different people in the friend groups throughout this franchise have just been more of cannon fodder characters, but I just feel like we have gotten a little bit more development for those people in some of the other ones. So I would have liked to have seen that here. You know, for instance, we have McKenna Grace, who has been an amazing actress since she has been a child. So I do think that it was strange to, you know, not get much out of her in this one. And I mean, you could argue that it's kind of similar to Casey Becker in the sense that she is kind of the one that people would actually recognize in this friend group. And they did kill her off first in here, but I do wish that we would have gotten more, at least with her. And I really think that they should have developed at least maybe a couple more in the friend group more than they did. And it reminds me a lot of, you know, like Ethan in Scream 6, who he just was not important within the friend group really at all. He was just kind of a nothing character, but the thing that made him matter a little bit more was the fact that he was one of the ghost faces in that movie, but none of them are ghost faces in this one, so it does kind of throw it off a little bit. I will say, though, that one thing that I'm assuming they had to have done on purpose, it would shock me if they didn't, but I see stuff online all the time about, like, how if you see a character in blue plaid, they are probably a ghost face. And we did have two of the different people in this friend group wear clothing like that in here, and then neither of them were. So I'm sure that that was kind of just trying to throw people off a little bit, which I appreciate that to an extent. So I do also want to say that some of the references that I liked in there, I liked that they were using very similar dialogue when Tatum's boyfriend climbed into her window, and they even did the version of Don't Fear the Reaper that was used in the original film. I thought that was really cool to put in here. But now I want to get into talking about the reveal of the ghost faces. And we do kind of have to split it up a little bit since we have one that was unmasked much earlier in the film than the others. So the first one was Carl, and he was unmasked after he got hit by Gail's car, which I thought was really funny, to be honest. But there's really not a lot to say about him. I mean, we got to see him on screen for a very short period of time when he wasn't Ghostface, and he didn't really get to say much of anything. So I don't really have a lot to say about him in general here. So then we have our other two ghost faces, who are Anna Camp's character, Jessica, and then we have Ethan Embry's character, Marco. And I think that it was very disappointing, to be honest. The unmasking scene. This is probably the most disappointed that I've been for any of them. And it was probably my own fault because I just was hoping so much that Stu would actually be one of the killers in this one. Obviously, they had planned for him to be alive and in the flesh for Scream 3, but then everything had to be rewritten so much and he didn't get to do that. So I did still kind of hold out hope that he might be alive and well in this franchise. But it just seems like that is not ever going to be the case, unfortunately. We had so many different characters saying that he was dead in here. And I guess maybe part of me will still hold out hope for that, but I don't expect to ever get that now, especially with all the people saying that he was dead in here. But now, like, actually talking about the Ghostface reveal and stuff, as well as their motives. First and foremost, if it wasn't going to be Stu, these were the two people that I really thought were going to be the Ghostface killers. And it reminds me of Scream 6 in the sense that, you know, we had Dermot Mulroney, who is a bigger named actor, and it just made sense that maybe they would put him in a spot where he could try to shine and that is by playing the villain. So with these two people that I have definitely seen in other things before, I definitely thought that they were going to end up being Ghostfaces as well. And specifically Anna Camp, we get to see her be honestly like a little bit twisted almost in the original Pitch Perfect. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that she could be a Ghostface in this film and do a good job at it. But as far as the motive goes, I think that it was a pretty weak one. I do like the fact that we did have a little bit of a Scream 4 reference when they're talking about Sydney's book, Out of Darkness. But beyond that, I don't really like this overly well because it was just, kind of trying to bring Sydney back into it because she wanted her to continue to have all that trauma and stuff. And then she also wanted Tatum to end up being like the new Sydney 2.0. And I think it was just a weird choice. And it just really did make me sad that we didn't get to have Stu be one of the killers. I know a lot of people were talking about the fact that it wouldn't make sense for them to release the, knowledge that Matthew Lillard was coming back for this if he was actually Ghostface and stuff, because they would want to keep it under wraps. But part of me was like, well, maybe they're doing that to throw us off, but I guess not. So I do want to talk about the way that he was utilized in here. I think that he was utilized well. He got to be a part of quite a few different scenes, and he was getting to be on like a video chat with Sydney, and it was very clear that Matthew was having a great time being in this role again. So I did really like getting to see that for sure. And then when it comes to the other people that they brought back, they had Dewey back in here as well as Roman. And I didn't even realize that they were bringing back Mrs. Loomis. I don't know if they had released that information or if that was one that they were just throwing in as a surprise, because I knew that the other two were coming back along with Matthew Lillard. But I thought that it was cool to get to see all of them back in here again in the capacity that they could be in this movie. So, but, I was disappointed in some regards to this movie, but I did still have a really good time with it. And I do think that if you have the opportunity to go watch this one, you definitely should, because it's still a good time. And I think that I'm still interested to see where this franchise is going to go into, Scream 8 and beyond. But I want to know your thoughts on Scream 7 down in the comments. Did you enjoy this one, or were you a little let down by it as well? Let me know all of that down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and consider subscribing if you haven't yet for more horror content. I do post 2 new videos each week. You can follow me on Instagram for updates on my channel as well as additional horror content. You can also follow me on Letterboxd to see what I have been watching lately and my brief thoughts on any of those films. If you would like either of those, they are linked in my channel description for easy access for you guys. So before I wrap up this video, I did want to just touch on a few things that I wanted to talk about in March. So first and foremost, we are going to continue the Scream content. I do want to do a full ranking of the franchise, and then I also want to rank all of the Ghostfaces. That one's going to be interesting, I'm sure. It's going to take a lot of thought. But I'm also probably going to see The Bride, because we are going to get that one at my cinema. So if I do go see that, you will get a review for that as well. And then if there are any other horror movies that make it here that I'm able to go see, you'll get reviews for those in March as well. And then we are also going to be doing some videos about, I don't know how to even put it, but I guess women-centric horror stuff. That's what I'm going for this month a little bit as well. And then you will also be getting a full franchise ranking for Friday the 13th. I kind of just had to decide between the ones that we had this year, which would be either February, March, or November, when I wanted to do it, and I decided to go for March. Honestly, it would have been ideal to have a Friday the 13th in the summertime since that's more of a summer franchise, but I just figured we'll go ahead and do March for this one. I've been kind of working on my thoughts on that franchise in between doing these Scream videos, so I'm basically ready for it. I just have to get it filmed and get it up there for you guys on Friday the 13th. And then we will also be doing a video on St. Patrick's Day, and it's probably going to deal with Leprechaun, but I don't know beyond that. So if there are any other video ideas that you have for me, you can always suggest those, whether you put those in the comment section or you DM me on Instagram, you can do that. Also, if you ever have any horror movie recommendations for me, you can send me those on Instagram as well. I do kind of want to do a video pretty soon, another mixed bag review. I've done a couple videos like that before where I just talk about different horror movies that I have been watching lately that are maybe a little bit older, and I just want to talk about multiple in the same video. So if you have any more suggestions of horror movies, then maybe I might add that to one of my mixed bag review videos that I will do sometime soon. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting my channel so far. It doesn't go unnoticed. My name is Devin. This is Carpenter Hill. Thanks for watching.